this panel will focus on clean rooms. We have talked a lot about clean rooms and retail media networks to open the box. And we have three amazing expert speakers. So Petros, maybe first you. You have a rich background between agency and brands. And now you are the media director at L'Oréal UK. So I'm sure you will have a lot to tell about that. Welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Petros. And I think we are finishing our roundtables with the most remote roundtable guests because Alexia, you are originally from Australia.
Oh, yeah.
And with more than 5 years at Axiom and more than 8 years at LiveRamp, where you're now VP Brands UK and MEA, you are an absolute expert in data platform and audience solutions. So welcome, Alexia.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Lovely to be here.
And your neighbor is also a neighbor on the other side of the world because, George, you come from New Zealand. Welcome, George Coslett. You are now also based in the UK, and you are innovation director for the last months at Boots, so a retailer, Boots Media Group. You will tell us also about the exciting things you do. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with some UK trends to set the stage on this key topic of clean rooms and retail media network. Maybe Alexia, first, as you are part of the infrastructure, you can tell us a bit about the state of data collaboration in the UK.
Thank you, Luca. Okay, so anyone that knows me knows that I normally talk in threes. So let me talk about the three key trends that we see as LiveRamp as the infrastructure and very much at the center of the ecosystem of collaboration. I would say the first is there is a very maniacal focus on outcomes, transparency, and accountability. And what that translates into from a data collaboration point of view is measurement. And what we're seeing around measurement, I think a lot of the panelists spoke about this before, is a movement away from campaign-based lower funnel up into things that really matter around incrementality and those business outcomes that are really important to a CFO, whether it's around category, market share, lifetime value of a customer. So I'd say that's trend number one. And in order to support that measurement, the second trend is becoming really prominent, and that's the emergence of commerce media. And so, you know, you had Paul up here speaking about Uber. You've got other partners as PayPal starting to expand their commerce media, and these guys support really robust measurement and transactional data across a wide variety of verticals. And so that's becoming really important, being able to measure with great quality data. And I think Damien mentioned this before and I wasn't listening, but we do have a partnership with Netflix, so thank you, Damien. And so that's, you know, aligning this really quality transactional data with high quality inventory is super important. And this is where CTV is coming into play, and that matters because you can drive the accountability in a very known space. So when consumers are logging in and you have that transactional data, you can connect that. And the third thing I would say is after GDPR, we saw a lot of focus on first-party data. Now, L'Oréal was one of the biggest drivers of their first-party data strategy, and it will continue to be a really engaging and important part of the customer journey. But we're also seeing a resurgence and an openness to collaboration with third-party vendors. So if I want to be able to understand a lot more about my customer, what drives them, what are their behaviors, we are also seeing a resurgence around third-party data. So to summarize, one, measurement incrementality, two, commerce media and the acceleration of new channels, and three, openness to collaboration of third-party data coming back into the industry.
Thank you so much, Alexia. The market is in evolution, and so L'Oréal, you're, I think, a great contributor. So what is your analysis of those trends?
So for me, I think the one that really stands out, I completely agree, obviously. There's no question about it. But what I have noticed in terms of like a trend as an advertiser and having been on the agency side as well, is that the kind of like the openness to collaboration is the one that I've seen the biggest shift on, because previously it was all about working in silos, getting like, you know, the first party data. There's a bit of like a hesitance of sharing. Whereas now, and I can see that from us as well, from a Laure perspective, there's much more openness in like sharing data. I see the same trend coming from like the retailer side, because I think it comes without saying like there's a lot of like benefits on for both parties. So I think that's the main one. And then yeah, again, I don't want to repeat what Alex said already, but the measurement is also big. The evolution of that front. because you can so easily get lost in all the data and the insights and spend hours and hours, but leading nowhere. So you need to be very kind of like focused on that front. And we now have better kind of like metrics to actually do that exercise to then make more informed decisions as a business.
Thank you so much. George, retailers are playing the game.
Yeah, I think obviously agree with what both Alexia and Petros have said. From a retailer perspective, I think the largest trends we're seeing is the rise of offsite. So obviously in-store has been massive, but there is limitations in the scale that can drive. On-site the same. So what we've seen is the retailers that are building or developing their own offsite propositions and really a lot of investment into that space. So retail media networks that don't have them are creating them, and retail media networks that do have them are investing a lot of resource and money into them. Off the back of that, the second one that I would say is the blurring of lines, and Stain talked about it, I think Paul talked about it as well, and I couldn't agree more. Retail media hopefully will no longer be called retail media. I think we'd love to see a world where it is just media. And with that, you start to see the arrival of brand budgets and moving away from traditional shopper or retail budgets. The emergence of agencies kind of coming into the space as well, and the above-the-line or traditionally above-the-line campaigns being fueled by a lot of these retailer data. And then finally, because of that, I think we're seeing a shift away from hard performance metrics all the time. So starting to understand, Letitia talked about it earlier, around like new to brand rates and understanding more like brand equity and how it's kind of transforming a brand rather than just short-term sales numbers as well.
Thank you, George. Thanks for these enlightening visions. We're now going to talk about journeys, because data collaboration is a journey. It's a journey for brands, it's a journey for retailers, it's a journey for partners. So we'd be really curious to hear more about your journey. And maybe to start with you, Petros, at L'Oréal. What has been and what is your current data collaboration and cleanroom journey?
Yeah, so it's definitely been an evolution. I think kind of like the first step was to really get our house in order in terms of like the first party data that we have, because obviously it's not just about the quantity, it's about the quality of it. So I think we've been working over the last few years to make sure that we have like a very robust consumer database. You know, we're investing also in stuff like beauty tech, and different services that actually can give us even more insights about the consumer needs, the desires, behaviors, that again, we just constantly fuel that database to enrich it as much as possible. So that was the first thing that we did. And then obviously, as I mentioned earlier about the collaboration, is about how we work with key retailers and seeing what the opportunities are from a growth perspective, whether that's addressing kind of like new audience segments like male consumers, because I think at the beginning we focused a lot on analyzing and creating these audience segments based on our data, but obviously it's a no-brainer that if you enrich that with external databases, you will only kind of deliver better results. So that's quite where we are right now. And we're expanding, of course, outside retail and beauty. We're talking quick commerce. We're talking about other partners as well, which I think is super, super exciting.
Thank you. And so I guess in this journey, Boots has a special place as well.
Absolutely.
So from your perspective, George, what is the journey for Boots as a retail media network?
Yeah, I think for Boots, like I talked about earlier, we kind of started from a BMG perspective 4 years ago. And in that time, we really focused on partnerships and events as kind of our core to start with. In-store was a big focus. We moved into on-site with kind of the move of COVID. I think the Boots website has had a lot more traffic in the last few years than it ever probably expected to have. And that's really kind of changed the business and how that works. And then now we're moving into the off-site world and kind of trying to make sure that, as Petros said, the organizational structure of our data is in the position to do that. So we're working really hard on making sure that we're really lucky at Boots with the richness of the data that we have. Like the ad card is just an amazing kind of opportunity and offer into market. And I know that consumers, you know, like speak really highly of it and the connection that they have with Boots. what that gives us is such a depth and breadth of data, and now it's all about how can we organize that and activate it, and then use it for measurement, but in a privacy-safe way because of the trust that's placed within Boots and that consumer data. So that's why, yeah, lucky to work with both people on stage with me to kind of activate that.
Great. So Petros, you mentioned that, of course, you have a strong partnership with Boots, but from a general standpoint, what do you expect from your data collaboration and cleanroom partners, such as Boots, but also many others, and also more specifically, how do you work with self-service versus managed models?
Great question. So what do we expect? I think to put it simply, it's transparency, flexibility, and then obviously to prove there's clear business value to that. To kind of like answer the first part of the question, I think when it comes to the self-serve, kind of like a managed service, it's a kind of like a very hot topic for us, because obviously self-serve is like the sweet spot, right? Because it gives us as an advertiser more control. You know, we can have like our data scientists doing like their own kind of like digging for insights. There's a lot of value in terms of like getting kind of like any metrics that we're interested in. But yeah, I can understand like from a retail perspective, there might be a bit of hesitance, and that's why it's really important to work very closely on that topic, to create the right kind of like user interfaces within the tools that are used to do this. Obviously, privacy and security is paramount because we're dealing with sensitive data, and especially if you bring in the media agency into that. But definitely self-serve is the preferred way to go. Obviously, you need to upskill the teams to be able to know what they should be looking for. And in terms of like the transparency, flexibility, and the clear business value, the other thing that I would say is like what we always kind of like look for is kind of like having that curiosity and like pushing for the innovation. Like, as you know, I think probably Letitia would have mentioned that we always like pushing boundaries, and it can be a bit scary at times because obviously privacy comes into play, etc. But having that same kind of like mindset, it's quite important, and we're quite lucky actually. Not saying just because we're sharing the stage, but like with Boots, obviously there's a very long like term partnership there that like enables us to an extent to do that.
Thank you, Petros. It's really fascinating how brands are accelerating on this topic and how the partnership between brands and retailers are evolving very fast from trade and negotiation to collaboration. And so maybe, George, you can explain us how you navigate in this change of paradigm, and so how you provide elements and data and transparency to your partners, so how you address those expectations, but you still are able to navigate this line, and it's not easy. So what are you able to provide to your partners very concretely? What KPIs, what data?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, right? And anyone that solves that one, I think, will be in a very good position over the next few years. But yeah, from a Boots perspective, like I kind of mentioned earlier, we have that richness. We know how valuable it is, but we are seen not just like a grocer and things like that. And the customer perception of Boots is different because of that. So as an innovation director, I kind of see the opportunity and really want to dive in and kind of explore those boundaries, as Petros was talking about earlier. But it's about doing it the Boots way, so making sure that we're going through the right channels, that all our data is privacy safe, and the partnership with LiveRamp is a big part of that, and that's obviously why we've gone into that and why we've kind of continued that over the past few years. They allow us to house that data in the right way, to anonymize it in the correct way, to activate it privacy safe, and then measure off the back of it. So I would say from a data collaboration space, that's where Boots is kind of focusing on. And then to answer your question around KPIs, this might be my agency background leaning in a bit, and still new to the world of retail, but I definitely want to push away from just pure performance indicators. There's obviously a role for ROAS, there's obviously a role for ROI, but I think that retail media should and could do a lot more than that. we're seeing the likes of CTV and ITV and C4 and people like that starting to activate. And when you're talking about those environments, the KPIs need to change as well because the consumer expectation and the role of those touch points is different. So we're doing a lot of work to understand what KPIs matter to our partners, what KPIs matter to us, and then how we can build out and work together to get that kind of measurement framework.
Thank you so much. So, Alexia, maybe it's the time to enter and open the box. You are representing LiveRamp. You are unlocking all this world of potentialities between brands and retailers. Can you show us a use case, an example of application of what a clean room and data collaboration can help unlock between those partners?
Yeah, of course. Okay, before we kind of maybe get into the presentation, let me set the scene a little bit. So a lot of the retailers of the last 2-3 years have invested really heavily in their on-site owned and operated media, which allows for commercialization of those assets and for brands to extract value. Now we're seeing an evolution into off-site, which, as George mentioned before, is becoming even more important and a growing trend. And why it's important for the brands sitting in the room is if you think about your media plan overall, it doesn't just factor the on-site of a retailer. There has a lot of factoring on the off-site. So whether it's Meta or Facebook, or Meta is Facebook, so too many name changes, Pinterest and the social and the CTV, it's really important that there is a breadth of opportunity there to support your media plans. And so if you think about on-site and off-site, the challenges that exist there are they're normally operated by two differing vendors. So in our case, in Boots, it's Criteo, and we run off-site as LiveRamp. They are two different sets of audiences. There are two different touch points in terms of purchase. One happens on e-commerce and one happens in store. And so if you're a brand or if you're a consumer, how do you ensure the most effective way to drive the audience strategy and customer journey and that measurement? And so what we set out to do with BMG, Criteo, and ourselves was find a way to unify that and understand the result of that omni-channel approach. And so this test that we did here, and this is what I love BMG, is George has a title of Innovation Director, which is what you don't normally see, which is great that we can trial these things. So what we were really focused on is how can we drive a unified audience strategy across those on-site and off-site channels, and how do we deliver the measurement across that. So if I could just ask to switch to the next slide. This is a bit of a schematic on how we manage this test and hypothesis and the end results of that. So Boots have a very strong Advantage card, club card program, and BMG are the supporter of that, and they drive a lot of the strategy around those audiences. And so the starting point was being able to find a core audience set that could be unified across these two challenges. So the BMG team set up that strategy and the audiences. They then utilised those audiences across Criteo to support on-site activity and across LiveRamp to support off-site activity. And those customers were driven to the outlets across e-commerce and store. And in order to be able to measure that, we utilised our cleanroom technology to bring in the Criteo exposure data from a media standpoint, to bring in the transactional data from Boots across both their e-com and store, and then be able to measure the effectiveness of that. And the output of that was a 22% increase on ROAS when we looked at the overarching connection between the offline and on-site retail media. And that's a really exciting opportunity for Boots, because not only does it show a unified measurement strategy, but it also can measure some of the halo effects that the on-site media of these retailers are driving into other channels. And so that's a use case that we have from our side in terms of how collaboration can help bring multiple data sets together and deliver value.
Thank you, Alexia. I think we have a clearer understanding on how you can work with retailers such as Boots. Maybe from your perspective, George, what is your vision regarding data clean rooms? How has it impacted your business, maybe your organization, the way you deal with clients? Tell us more.
Yeah, I think obviously Petros and Letitia have talked about it as one of our key partners in terms of that collaboration of data, both from their side and from the retailer side as well. Now, just speaking honestly, there's obviously lots of difficulties to that, and one of them is scale, one of them is speed of access. So yeah, my personal vision is really seeing a world where we can bring that in easier, starting to collaborate within those privacy safe spaces, which is obviously critical, and then with the end goal of building both both parties, right? So yes, it's about driving sales for L'Oreal, but it's about driving sales for all of our partners, but it's about driving sales for Boots as well. So how do we use this data collaboration to build both parties and to drive kind of progress within that space? So yeah, personally, I think like we're making the right steps towards it. It is a slow progress, I would say, but yeah, from a Boots side, I think it's about how we can kind of work really key with our key partners in order to build kind of both parties up.
It's really exciting times, I think, in this field of clean rooms and data collaboration. Maybe we want to come back to one slide because we have great partners here, and no, it's the next slide, but we already showed this slide before, but we want to insist on that because I think L'Oreal, Colgate, they are here with Hills representing on this slide. They are setting the North Star of maybe where the market is going with this question of clean rooms and data collaboration in data ecosystems. And I think it's maybe a moment where we are going also to see a convergence between innovation, where you can create a lot of possibilities because ultimately the companies now have access to the granular data, but also scale and delivery. We are talking a lot about business impact. And I think, I mean, we can see it with L'Oreal and Colgate. They are really proving that they can move the lines on huge media budgets, but not only media and marketing, but also the partnership, the trade partnerships. And so we really think at Numberly and with our great partners here that it takes a village, yes, to embark on this journey, but it is highly necessary. We were talking during the break with many of you on what is needed to start this journey. And so maybe to conclude on that, I think we will have the best advice on maybe from you, Alexia, first, how to get started. So maybe you have some tips on how to get started and maybe get there.
Yeah, good question, Luca, how to get started. So obviously the Hills example here didn't start with, 10 sort of partners around that. So my first advice to kind of any brand or partners is you already have a natural partner ecosystem around your business. You work with them today in many differing ways, and data collaboration should only be an evolution of that partnership. So firstly, map out the partners that you have around you. The second thing I would say is select one or two partners that are the most meaningful and define your use cases and define your business outcomes first. Once you have done that, then go on the journey of finding the right vendor, the legal process, all the data privacy checks that you need to do. And I would really advise that you start in that order because I've seen many cases where people flip that around. They will start with trying to find the right technology and going through those processes. And if you haven't defined the use case or the outcomes, what ends up happening is this sense of disillusionment that the technology doesn't work, data collaboration is too hard, and you can't scale. But I think if you flipped it on the other way and said, let's find the right partners, find the right outcomes, deliver those use cases, and work collaboratively together and openly and strategically, not tactically, then I think there's a really great opportunity for what we believe can scale to scale.
If I may add, because I completely agree. I think it's very important to be very strategic about the partners, right? Because it's not just about collaborating just for the sake of it. So completely agree. I think the second thing, again, is about the show. Don't just tell. So create a business case because you will need to show the clear impact on the KPIs and like what does this deliver for the business to have the conversations with finance, the marketing teams, and everyone that gets involved. And I think if I just wanted to add, I think the privacy, navigating that because it's paramount. Like you need to become besties with like legal and your DPO. It might not be the most exciting kind of like part of it, but if you take them with you on the journey and what does this mean then further down for the business rather than introducing them later on, can unlock a lot of things and speed things up. And then the last thing that I mentioned earlier as well is about finding those partners as well that are willing to experiment because some of these territories are pretty unknown yet in terms of like what you want to do because then you will have the conversations like we have with Boots and we were like, okay, we want to see X, Y, Z from a measurement perspective, etc. So it's quite important to get that right, I'd say, just to add.
Thank you so much. You preceded the closing question. And maybe just to insist on some key words that were maybe reconciling all of us this morning. We are talking very often with Hills, Colgate, and with you, L'Oreal, of learning agenda, so learning, but also shared learning agenda. And shared learning agenda, I think it's a key perspective of when you are sitting with your partners on a yearly strategic business development plan, a retailer or a publisher. You talk about what you can put on the table, not only in terms of price, in terms of products, but also maybe in terms of data. So data is just another currency to build value together. So it's the topic of everyone now. It's not only the topic of tech people or marketing people, but it's the topic of everyone. Thank you. Thanks a lot to all of you. Maybe we have some time for one question or a reaction of the audience or remote. Yeah, we have one. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I was wondering, actually, what do you think that clean rooms will push in terms of, for the marketers, like to move from an individual targeting to a more ecosystem-based strategies?
Do you want me to take that question? So the whole idea with clean rooms, and particularly the way that LiveRamp likes to look at it. So where LiveRamp started from is we are an ecosystem and business where we, for the longest time of the last decade, built a network to allow data to come from an offline space, whether you have emails, in-store sales, and activate that into a media space. So whether it's on-site, whether it's with DSP, SSPs, or across the wall gardens, that is the legacy where LiveRamp has its kind of a depth in. And so when we set out to build cleanroom technology and our acquisition of Habu, these are the two worlds that we tried to bring together. One is allow the infrastructure to provide the collaboration in a very secure way to ensure that data movement is minimized in line with any privacy regulations, but also ensure that we have the network above and beyond that. And so that is how we are trying to solve that piece. So where the cleanroom can help you is to build those one-on-one relationships, where the network comes into place to help you scale that out. And what's fantastic about a lot of the cleanroom technology and where we're trying to evolve is it's not just a box that you just throw data in. We are working really hard to create what we define as templates that allow for use cases to be standardized across many places, whether it's retailers, whether it's wall gardens. And so there are three layers to this acceleration. One, the technology that allows you to feel safe about collaborating. Two, the time to market reduction through templatization. And then three, the network to help you scale that.
Thank you for the answer. Thank you for the great question. We are okay? The last one? Yeah, the last one. Thank you.
Hi, George. I have a question for you more as from a retailer perspective. Obviously, you deal with giants like L'Oreal and other smaller independent business. All of those opportunities sound amazing, but nearly feels like they are only for the big guys. So as the innovation director, is this something you also keep in the back of your mind on how you are you actually considering working with smaller independent business that don't necessarily bring the same thing on the table as L'Oreal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not just a solution for, say, the big players and things like that. I think one of, at least what I've seen, talking about our offsite proposition, for example, I think it could actually be argued that it's more beneficial for the smaller players. It gives you the opportunity to be a lot more targeted, a lot more strategic with how you show up, and you can get a lot more impact from necessarily not the size of the media budgets. So yeah, from my perspective, I think that data targeting and data collaboration can be potentially even more impactful for smaller scale businesses and things, because yeah, it allows you to play without necessarily just the largest budgets within the market.
Thank you so much to the three of
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you for this amazing panel. It's time for the final one. Please, Sorin, if you could come. Oh, you brought water. Amazing.